Just want to do a follow-up video. It's the final one in the series on making this Bingham project's takedown recurve bow. Really cool project. I enjoyed it. There were some stressful, tense moments because I didn't know what I was doing and learned along the way. Got it all done, all the videos out there. There's the final one. I just wanted to do a wrap-up, if you will, follow-up. Just kind of talk about what I learned as a newbie doing this, some things along the way so if you're looking at this, just to watch out for, some things that I didn't necessarily know, some things I messed up on, corrections I made and stuff like that. So just want to kind of make a list of things, and I'm just going to kind of go through them, and I just should hopefully be just a short video just to hit on all that stuff. As far as equipment goes, the bandsaw, I definitely use that to cut the riser out. I did cut the limbs with that. You really don't need that for the limbs. I mean, I could have used the belt sander for that with the 36 grit sandpaper. That would have taken it off just fine. You can do hand tools, and my hat's off to you guys that, the guys that do this with just hand tools, because I mean, I can't imagine the man hours and the craftsmanship to go through doing all the work that it took to get this done without power tools. But bandsaw and the sander is the two main things that I use. Really, that sander. Without that sander, it would have just took me eons. But the sander I use from everything from shaping the limbs, getting the epoxy glue off of the thing, shaping the riser, flipped over from the belt sander to the spindle sander. So that was number one tool really, is that sander. So let's talk about some of the things to tell you about real quick. Yeah, so basically, number one thing to do, get on tradgang.com. Okay, it's a great website for traditional archers. It's fantastic. It's got a lot of forums out there for traditional archery. There's one specifically called the Bowier's Den. And I'm going to tell you, the Bingham's kit is great, but there's some things that I didn't learn from the Bingham's kit that I only learned by being in the Bowier's Den on TradGang. There's a lot of guys with a wealth of experience. It's just really invaluable. They're free to give you help out there, and they were very helpful on a number of steps I went through, because first time doing this, it does cost some money. I don't want to screw it up and have some questions, and those guys are really, really helpful. And so I encourage you to get on TradGang, read through that stuff. You can post on the Bowier's Den forum. People will help you there. So really, really great resource there. Number two, Elmont at Bingham's, their customer support is absolutely fantastic. So at any point in time, you can pick up the phone and call Elmont. And I've called him a number of times, so he knows who I am because we've talked a bunch. So I know who he is. He knows who I am now, but we've talked a bunch. He's very willing to help you. He doesn't try to rush you on the phone. He's patient, listens to you, gives you advice and guidance. So customer support is fantastic, okay? Just want to get those two out of the way, and let's talk about some of the things as I went through the build process of what happened. I probably would not have done this project if it didn't come in a kit that like Bingham's puts out, okay? So number one, I think it's a fantastic kit. Now, I bought this in 2017. I didn't make it until 2021, okay? After I bought the kit, shoulder surgery, left arm, then I had a slap tear that had to heal, then shoulder surgery, right arm. So I was kind of out of commission with my shoulders for a while, so I didn't bother making this. I'm just telling you that because what I'm gonna tell you about is the video. They put an instructional video that comes with the kit, and that instructional video looks like it was made like in the 80s and still in low resolution, real grainy format. It was on a DVD, but real grainy, the square set, not with widescreen like we're used to seeing today. And maybe they've updated that in the last 4 years. I don't know, so that's why I wanted to point that out. But nevertheless, he goes through the steps. The video is about an hour long through everything from making the heat box to doing everything with the bow right down to the finish. What I'm gonna say about that, it's a great resource, and you wanna look through that, you wanna listen to it a couple times, watch it a couple of times, and I'd go back to the different sections each time before I tackle the next step and looked at it. But what I will tell you, the number one thing, is when you watch the video, it looks like every step is really easy. From gluing up the limbs to just building the form, to gluing up the riser, to doing the limb tips, to everything looks really easy, and it is not, okay? It just looks so simplified, and maybe that's because they've done it 1,000 times, but for a newbie starting out, there were several areas where I'm like, this is not working like the video. So don't worry, from what I understand, my experience is kind of normal. Okay, so first off, I ordered the 1.75, 1 3/4 inch limb kit, not the 2-inch kit. So when I got the instruction manual, when you're talking about building the form, they do not talk about doing 1.75. They assume you're doing 2-inch form. They tell you what size plywood to use a 2-inch form. And if you follow that, your form's gonna be too big. You want your form to match the size of the limb. So if you check out the video I did on building that form, you'll see how I mixed the plywood and ram board to come to right to 1.75 inches. And again, I got that tip from the guys on TradGang that told me to use a ram board. So very helpful resource there. So the other point when you're doing the form, when you watch Bingham's video, they've got the form, and there's a Formica strip that you glue in there, so you have a constant, flat, smooth surface that you're laying the limbs into. Okay? And that's what the Formica's for. But the issue is, you know, they use some contact cement and they pop it in there and it just lays right in, it sticks. Yeah, no, that didn't happen at all. I ended up having to like hold this down, get another person to help me tape it down, and then let that dry. So that didn't go like the video, so just want to throw that out. Next thing is gluing up the limbs. Let me just tell you this. I should have done this. You just wear gloves all the time. Just get used to putting gloves on, because I got so much fiberglass in my hands from just dealing with the fiberglass lambs. You know, just picking them up, holding them, whatever, shard of fiberglass go on my fingers, and you just couldn't get it out. I tried using tape and everything else, and it just took days for it to wear out. And I get that one worn out, and then I pick up another one. So wear some gloves, number one. So as far as the limbs go, yeah, you want to lay your limbs out from your glass to your tapers to your parallel to your wedge. You want to do the dry run, definitely go through that. The glue up process for that, it takes a little while, especially the first time, and you're probably going to use too much glue. And going back, I think a straight edge, a harder straight edge is better to apply the glue than the foam brush that I started with. So that's just kind of a lesson learned there. It's probably going to use a lot of glue, and it's really going to be helpful if you have somebody to help you get these limbs in place and get the form put on them. Okay, it's going to be a lot easier. I can't admit, I know you can do it by yourself, and people have done it, but as a newbie, you want to have some other hands with you to help you get these limbs strapped down in that form before you put the top on. One of the other issues with getting in the form, once it comes out of the form, you're going to have so much epoxy built up on the edge of this limb. I mean, it's going to be on both sides all the way down. I mean, thick chunks like this, and you're going to go, oh my goodness, I don't remember seeing like this bad in the video. But apparently it's kind of normal, especially for a newbie who's probably going to use too much epoxy. And I was real concerned not doing this before was, let me just take it off right to the edge, right where that epoxy stops, and get right to where the original limb edge was, and only go that far. But the reality is once you have all that off, you're going to put a template on this fiberglass limb, and you're going to cut that template out. You're going to bring it down to size. You got enough room to work with. Just go ahead and take that limb, put it on like some 36 grit on a belt sander, and just get all that stuff off. Not going to be a problem. You're going to have room. So I was really worried about going too far with the sander and taking too much off at that point, and that's really not a concern at that point. You can just get all those boogers off. You know, you'll be good to go. Okay, so as part of the limb preparation, what you're going to do is you're going to get some masking tape, and you're going to put it on the fiberglass lambs. Okay, one for the belly and one for the back. Okay, and that's where you're going to mark on it and everything else. You're going to put your center line on that. Now, I messed up, and this affected me down the road, that by the time I got my center line on one side, for whatever reason, my center line was not the same on the back side. So you do some things with this center line, but then you flip it over when you go to do the drilling jig, you're using the center line here, and it's all of a sudden it's off, okay? So really, really important, check your center line on that tape. In fact, what I would do next time, once I've drawn my center line down on this side, okay, and again, this is just a rectangle piece at that point in the process, right? It's just a rectangular piece of fiberglass. What I would do is I would look at my fiberglass, I'd put them side to side, I would look at the tapes at the ends, draw a line across the top, make sure they are even. Look down the end of it like this, make sure those lines are even on the top and the bottom of that, and make sure whatever that line is on the belly is exactly in the same position on the back, because I didn't do that and it ended up off, and I had to readjust. And you'll see in some of the videos how my line coming to the limb tip was off a little bit, because I had to readjust based on that. So real important about that. The other thing, once that limb is cured, you know, 24 hours in the heat box, or however many hours, I forget, but in the heat box, wasn't 24, I don't think, 4 hours, I think, in the heat box, 4 or 5 hours. So, but once that limb cures, and you go to pop it out of the limb, you know, when you watch the video, he just comes out and pops right out. Yeah, didn't happen again. That thing is so glued in place, it wasn't coming out. I thought I was gonna break the thing getting it out. And then again, Trad Gang, those guys are like, hey, just take a mallet, tap a little bit on the end, and sure enough, you know, that limb is sitting in there like so, and just tap it a little bit, and all of a sudden it'll start to pop out, and then it comes out pretty easy. Back to the form this is sitting in. It's going to need some cleanup probably, because you're probably going to get some glue on it. That Formica, I found some acetone, just wipe some acetone on there, and then anything the acetone doesn't get off as far as glue, razor blade. Just take that razor blade really flat, run it down the Formica, that'll clean that form up for you for the next limb. You've got a whole project plan, a blueprint for all your templates. You're going to have a template for the shape of the limbs, you have templates for the riser, and they talk about, you know, using a sturdier form. Well, I traced this all out on tracing paper. Actually, I think it was parchment paper that I traced out on, because you could see through really easy. Traced it all out, cut it out of the parchment paper. You know, parchment paper is pretty thin, and I thought, I don't want to transfer this to poster board. Let me just use that. I tried to do that, and that was just a fail. So especially for the limbs, go ahead and get it onto poster board. It's going to be easier to clamp that on there than it will the parchment paper. From experience, just trust me on that one. So go ahead and put it on the poster board. I also tried using contact cement and putting the parchment paper on my riser in order to cut the shape out. I figured, hey, I'll glue that on there. You saw that in the video. That was a fail too. And really, once you start making some of the cuts, it's going to get rid of your lines for the other. So you kind of have to draw on your riser a couple times, at least unless I'm doing something wrong there. But you're going to have to draw a couple times, because as you make certain cuts, you're going to remove some of your lines. So just go ahead and draw on the riser and then get it cut. It's all going to get sanded off anyway, so I would do that next time. All right, so next part, the limb tip overlays. And that was actually the last step I had to use any epoxy. And actually, what you get are the A and B part epoxy, and that was enough to do the entire bow. And what I mean by that, the limb glue up, because every layer has to have epoxy between them. You're putting epoxy on every mating surface it touches inside the limb. You got 2 glass slams, you got a taper, you got a parallel, and you got your wedge in each one of these limbs. But then in the riser, the standard kit just comes with a block of wood for the riser. I had some, I think this is Cocobolo, I'm not sure how you say it, but I had some extra of this wood. I wanted to try to use that. I also ordered some maple as an accent stripe, and then some black phenolic. So I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 layers of glue up in my riser. So epoxy on every surface of that. Then when it came to the limb tips, I did the maple, the black phenolic, and then the extra of the limb tip here. And so basically there was 3 layers there that had to be glued up. I had 3 pieces here, and I just thought, hey, you know, I marked it with a tape, I'll glue them on here, and we'll just clamp it all together like you do in the video, and it makes it look easy. But they only did 1 piece in the video, okay, and they clamped it on, great. But I thought I'll just get close on the shape. Next time I would do this, it was really hard, stuff sliding all around, plus you got a little bit of a curvature there. So the next thing, the 3 pieces, I would cut those 3 pieces to the exact same size, possibly even glue those together, then put them on and glue it on here and pull it into shape. Just that was kind of difficult to do, but it turned out okay, but it could have been done a lot easier. So out of all the mistakes I've made along the way, most of them were easily corrected and had methods to go about doing it. But there was one mistake that I made that I don't know if I'm gonna have an impact on this or not. But somebody pointed this out to me on YouTube and in the forum as well. But I put these black phenolic stripes in here, and as well on the tips. And I might have already had it done right when I did the tips, I can't remember, but when I did it in the riser, you know, I just took a piece of sandpaper across it real quick. But I had guys follow up me and say, hey, you really need to sand that so the entire glossy finish on that black phenolic is gone. You want to have that dusty looking rough phenolic for that epoxy to hold on to. I did not do that. So time will tell if the epoxy is going to hold this together. Right now I don't show any signs of any weakness or anything coming apart. It feels really good, really smooth, but time will tell on that. But doing this again, make sure you sand all the layers when you're gluing them up. So after all that's said and done, you get to the riser where you're going to cut this out. And I had a bandsaw with a blade. It was pretty dull by this point in time, so I had some challenges there. Got it cut out, rough cut out, and then we start shaping it. And that's where I'm using the belt sander, 36 grit. I'm using a spindle sander with different size spindles. I had 40 grit on most of that, and then 80 grit, depending on which one I had. And basically I use that to shape all the curvatures in here, everything. And you know, it just takes a long time for me, because you know, I'm still trying to figure this out. I don't want to take too much off, but at the same time, you know, you don't want to mess up anything, and so just take your time with it. It's going to take you a little while to get this to the shape that you want. And even once I finished the shaping video, I went back and I did some more shaping on it to narrow this handle down a little bit, take off some of the bulk there in the handle, and a little more rounding. So it does take some time, so just take your time and hang with it. But once that's all said and done, and everything's good, it's time to do the finishing. So that finishing is really that final sanding, where we start sanding the limbs, we start rounding over the edges, which is great, because once you do that, you don't need the gloves anymore. Rounding all this stuff over, rounding everything over, start working your sandpaper up. I went all the way to 400 grit on the riser, starting down at, obviously I did a 36 and the 80, and then I worked up to 120, 180, 220, 320, and then 400, working all the way through this until you got a real nice finish on here. It doesn't take that much extra time to get yourself up to 400. It's worth doing, I think, because I got a very, very smooth product here in the end. But then when the final spray goes on, you know, I separate all 3 pieces and hung it up, and I used the method that Kenny M recommended. And I don't know if I did it exactly the way he does it. I probably didn't, but I did the best I could. And basically it's this Duplicolor perfect match, and then a Duplicolor matte wheel finish that you can get at O'Reilly Auto Parts. And basically I probably put, probably about 5 coats of the perfect match on the riser and gloss on there. And each time I put a coat, I'd come back after that with sandpaper, and I work my levels of sandpaper up higher and higher and higher to finer grits with the more coats I put on here. The limbs I struggled with, really, because the surface is already fiberglass, so things want to run on that. When I was putting the perfect match on here, and I'm not a great sprayer, so I'm trying to do light coats, but nevertheless, I'd get one limb done, and one side would be good. I'd flip it over and I'd have a run, right? So I'd have to stop and have to sand that out and do it again. But what I found out is when you're doing the perfect match, if you lay the limbs horizontal and spray them that way, you won't get the runs. It goes on a lot easier. Now, when it comes to the matte wheel finish, I found that that doesn't run. It's not as thick, it seems, and not as runny as the perfect match. So we doing the wheel finish part, I went ahead and hung them up once I realized that. And that got me through that. But look, overall, in the end, I got a nice product. It may not be perfect. So just a total newbie at this. So I'm just kind of giving you all this as a newbie tackling this project, what it takes, some of the issues I ran into. Like I said, I probably would not have done this if it wasn't for a Bingham's kit that had kind of everything laid out, a video to watch, blueprints, the whole deal. But now I've gone through the process. I've learned a ton from it. I gained a lot of experience from the project, as well as from Trad Gang. The guys on Trad Gang were, like I said, invaluable. But yeah, it's a good kit. And now I've got a form that's in my barn that I can build another recurve with. I've got a heat box. So the question is, what's my next project going to be? I'm not sure yet. So I want to get to that one of these days, figure out what I'm going to do next. Because after you get one built, you're like, oh, it's so cool, you want to do it again. But overall, the end product, I think, turned out amazing. In fact, the way I know it was amazing is because I went inside and I showed one of my daughters, and she said, Dad, I had doubts when you started because there were so many parts of the process that looked like they could have went bad. She says, but that is one legit bow. So when my daughter told me that, it turned out pretty good. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.